We're live. If you can see the thumbnail, if you've taken a look at that, you can see that it is me standing with a single turbo next to a twin turbo. Very cool stuff because it brings up the age-old question: would you rather have a single or twins? And then all the other, all the other questions that are associated with that. Most notably, that which one of them is better? Obviously, single turbo or twin turbo. Obviously, twin turbo is better because there's two of them. So as an absolute standpoint, if you have two of the turbos that you had one of, you can make more power. It will support more power. But there's obviously more to the question than that. The other question, the reason that people pick twins over singles usually is a packaging thing, because a lot of times you can fit two smaller turbos in the area that you want. Some people like them for aesthetics because it's symmetrical. You have two of them right where you want them. And you have the dual exhaust running out and the two going into the intercooler, however you have that routed. I have to admit that does look better. But there's a lot of, and I think because of a lot of the older books that we have on turbocharging, and because a lot of the OEMs have made these statements and they've been regurgitated by a lot of the automotive press, that yeah, we have two small lightweight turbos for maximum to increase the spool rate. So people tend to think that two turbos will somehow spool better than one single turbo. And really, they think that that's an absolute, that two turbos, of smaller versions, because they'd almost always be smaller. You wouldn't have an LS motor with a single S475 and then, okay, I'm going to put two S475s on it. The only reason you do that is because I don't want just 1,000 horsepower. Now I want 2,000 horsepower. But you certainly wouldn't be doing it for spool rate. So the question isn't as an absolute deal. It isn't are two turbos better than one turbo? The question really becomes, and this is what people don't like. People want headlines. They want, oh yeah, twin turbos are better or single turbos better or whatever thing. They want that as an absolute. They want these, well, how much boost can I run without changing the ring cap? How much boost can I get away with on pump gas? All these things. Well, you can get away with 8.9 pounds of boost. I don't know. Depends on your combination. Lots of other stuff going on there. And it's the same thing with singles and twins. It's the same things with any turbo. So let's say you were comparing two turbos. Well, does this one better? Is this one better than this one? You have to define better. Does it spool quicker? Does it make more power? Does it have a better lower charge temperature? What are all these things that you want it to do? And then you'd have to go and test it and go, okay, look, this one does this thing that's on my list, and this one does this. And then now the exact same thing, the exact same scenario would hold true if you were comparing whatever single you're comparing to whatever twins you're comparing. Because that's the thing. The comparison would have to be exactly between the one turbo that you're talking about and the two turbos that you're talking about. Which one's better of these things? And then you could get into subtle nuances. Okay, well, what if we changed from a 0.89 hot side on the twins down to a 0.68, and then you could get into all that, and then you could try to optimize it for the thing that you're doing, and all that's possible. But that usually takes actual testing. I mean, we have a fairly good idea that if you go tighter on the AR on the hot side, it should be more responsive. The potential downside to that could be more back pressure, and that could cause also problems. Less of a problem on a twin setup than a single setup. So there are lots of things to consider, but we don't need to talk about the little things before we talk about the big thing. Is twins are not necessarily better or more responsive than a single. It depends on the thing that you pick, the exact single thing versus the exact dual thing. But this discussion, and first of all, go get your projects done, because it's Project Morning Motivation, and it's a new week, and hopefully you got stuff done on the weekend, and now you're going to get stuff done, during the week as well, even though it's getting colder and it's less stuff seems to get done. I know certainly for me, less stuff seems to get done when it's cold. And now we're getting ready for Thanksgiving, so we got a lot of other stuff that we have to get done. So project stuff is tough, but I'm looking forward to. I want to get down to West Tech so bad because I want to put together the 2.2 liter Dodge, and actually I need to get some dyno testing done. But I digress. So our single twin versus setup, we know that at the big picture, you got to test the exact things that you want to test. Whichever one is better. And then you get to determine what is better, not somebody else, not me, not anybody else. It's going to depend on your combination. But the next thing is, and in this photo, one of the things I asked is so what's wrong with this photo? And the reason that I asked that is because I always get that in the comments. I mean, we get lots of people obviously that watch it and like it and say, yeah, this is good. This is good data. This is good information. And that's awesome that you guys are leaving those comments. But there's always people out there that their like whole existence is pointing something out, like trying to find, I got to find a chink in the armor. I got to find something that's wrong. So what's wrong with this? Oh, that exhaust will never work. Oh, that plug wire is off. Oh, that thing is disconnected. Oh, that wastegate is leaking, or that line is not on there, or it's on the wrong side, or whatever the deal is. And so because they think that, first of all, I don't understand why that's your goal in life. That shouldn't be. That shows you're a very shallow, insecure person. So know that when you're going there making those comments about that, about trying to show somebody that they're wrong and you're right, know that that's what you're doing. That's what you're saying. You're stepping up to them and saying, hey, look, I'm really insecure and I need reaffirmation. And I'm going to do that by putting you down in this gigantic effort to try to make myself feel better. So here is the thing about your photo. And I'm going to make a statement about it. I'm going to say, hey, look, your wastegate wasn't tight, or the clamp wasn't on the discharge tube, or whatever. It wasn't on there. So when I say that, that totally negates everything that you've done in this test. And by extension, all of the testing that you've done, and then you as a person. That's the thought process. So the lesson here is don't be that guy. Don't go out of your way to look for things. Go out of your way to look for the good things in life. That's why the people are here talking, because they have lots of cool stuff to share. They have lots of good information. Even if you don't want kindness and friendship, you're not looking for that. I don't want any of that. There's lots of good, valuable information, not just from me, from lots of other people. So if you come here and ask questions, and then you can join in the community and realize that you have something to offer that's not negative, that's not, hey, I'm going to put you down for whatever reason because I wasn't hugged enough as a kid, whatever your situation is. You could actually escape from that and not be that anymore. You could evolve and step up and be a better person. And when you're that, you can come here and help, and you can get help, and all that's great. And I don't mean emotional help, but all that's here too if you want that. But help with your project. If you have a question about, hey, why isn't the left side turbo of my twins actually making boost? We can steer you in the right direction. I'm going to be able to do that probably, or other people here can throw out information as well. So however you do that, try to make the step away from being that guy. And make because our community is fairly small, the automotive community, relatively speaking, especially the performance side of that. Like almost everybody, certainly everybody in America has 1 or 2 or 5 cars. Some of us are project people, and we have way more than that. But so people have cars. But even that, of the people that have cars, like the people that have more than one car are usually like performance car guys. They have lots of unfinished projects. Normally that's going to be the performance car guy. The guy that has a car collection, that's a different guy, but he's still a car guy, and we want him as part of the community. But the performance end of that is very, very small. The vast majority of people that have cars, like 95% of them, are just people that have cars, and it's just a toaster to them. It's just a utilitarian thing that gets them to and from work, and so that they can hurry up and get home and get online and say terrible things to people on social media. So we are a small part of that, and there's no reason for us to be like infighting and trying to lessen everybody's value to try to elevate our own value, because we all know that doesn't really happen. But what will make you feel better is putting a turbo or twin turbos. 2 will make you feel twice as good on your project. But before you can do that, you have to go out and work on your project and get it done. Let's see what you guys are doing this morning. This is a Monday morning, right? Yes, it's Monday. Monday. I thought twins have a broader RPM range in the map. It depends on what twins you're talking about. People do want an easy button. They don't. People don't even want to like search things. They want to. Where's the link? That's the only thing that they know. I want an answer to my question, and it's super valuable, and it's super timely because I need to know it right now. I need to know it, and I have to know it right now. But I need you to send me a link. I'm not even going to use the easiest source of information ever devised by man, and that all I have to do is put L28 turbo, and all kinds of stuff comes up on L28 turbo that I can now go. In fact, more things come up than should, because then we go down a rabbit hole for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. But when you come out of that, you're more well informed. I mean, even if a lot of it is nonsense, you're going to get something out of that trip. And so that's good. You've become, and also you've actively done the search. It's like asking somebody else to work out for you. No, you need to go run. You need to lift weights. Otherwise, you don't get anything out of that. And it's the same thing with using your brain. If you figure out not just, okay, L28 turbo, okay, then maybe think about, well, I'm actually looking for L28 twin turbos, so I need to revise my search. And then I'm looking for an L28 twin turbo swap, and then so I've revised my search. Now you're thinking, you're using your brain, you're working out, and that's good stuff. Legitimate question, why would the OEMs pick twin turbos if single would suffice? Wouldn't they save a lot of money if they couldn't get it? Well, I don't know what the cost is of two smaller turbos versus the cost of one turbo, and a single turbo might not package very well. I think that they could get small turbos packaged much better in tighter engine compartments than they can one big single, because I don't think that they have that kind of real estate. They have this kind of real estate in a couple of spots, but they don't have this kind of real estate in one spot. Plus twins, I mean, come on, if one is good, the marketing people are going, oh no, we're definitely having twin turbos. We're not having a single. I got nothing much. Did my junk shop too cold? Yep, it is cold. Nitpicking, yeah, picking nits is not good, and we need nits. They shouldn't be picked all up. Yo-yo 6.4 Hemi heads in the back of a CRV gasket. Due at 130. So you're going to go pick them up? Cool. Working on my square burb. Nice. Made 366 and 343. Hot rod. I want to see what. Oh, here we go. Honest question, does this combination seem down on power junkyard LQ4? It's 862 heads, Texas speed. I've never run that cam, but a 214, 222 should work. So the new aluminum radiator came in yesterday, so I'm installing it. So is the only reason to have more than one turbo strictly packaging? No, you can have more than one turbo to have twice as much power if you're trying to do that. If you have 1,000 horsepower turbo, but you want 2,000, then 2 of the 1,000 horsepower turbos is better. Blue Collar made 366 and 343. Did it made that at the wheels, I'm assuming? And so if that's the case, I'd need to know what the rest of the drivetrain is. Like, what's the trans? Is that big tires on it or that kind of thing? It does seem a little bit low. For 4L80 half-ton Silverado, so normal size wheels and tires. It does seem a little low. Do you know what the timing is? You know what the air fuel is and stuff? And what exhaust is it through? I have a 64 Comet 2,700 pound car. Nice. It's a 200 inline 6-cylinder. I'm trying to figure out if I should turbo the 200 or put a 302 in it. I know it's my car, but what's your opinion? Well, for more power, the V8 would be better. An aluminum V8 would be even better. If you want to stay forward, obviously a 302, then I wouldn't go with an aluminum 302. The 302 thin wall casting block is fairly light anyway, but something with aluminum heads on it, aluminum intake would be good to try to keep the weight down. You will never make the power out of even a turbo 200 that you would. It'd be hard to make like even 400 horsepower with a turbo 200. It would take a bit of work. And a 400 horsepower 302 would be pretty simple. Then you could always add boost to that. I'm in no shape to work out. Round is a shape, and so is pear. Trying to learn about turbine maps with little success. Big facts, that's right. We got Monday facts going on. Just the facts, man. Turbine or compressor maps. There really aren't many turbine maps, lots of compressor maps, yeah. Thanks for doing 440 stuff. I have done very little 440 stuff. Twin turbo LT1. That'd be good for a flying Miata. Twin turbo costs more on the other parts, the intercooler and stuff, to have a 2 in and single out. It was 1992, I think EFI 300. That would be another potential swap. The bigger 6-cylinder, the bigger inline 6-cylinder, if you wanted to stay 6-cylinder on it. Twin turbo does have alliteration. That's very important. Got the double T. I've always been curious about how to widen, lengthen, elongate the power curve, boost as early as possible, carrying beyond rev limit without having to use compound or sequential. I don't really know why, other than on a diesel application, why you want full boost like at 1,000 RPM. I'm just a cruiser. I like to have fun. Probably mainly for trips to McDonald's with the boys. Then do the thing that speaks to you. Is a stage 3 truck Norris cam still considered a mild cam? I don't know what a stage 3 truck Norris cam is, unless they're applying that name to, and I hope Brian's not doing that, because it's going to be way too confusing for stuff. I mean, I know that from a search engine standpoint that's good, because the truck Norris name is obviously very popular. But if there are different variations of truck Norris cams, it's just going to be way too confusing. Road race guys want power early and a higher rev limit. Road race guys don't want power at 1,000 RPM. I am a road race guy and have done lots of road racing, and that sort of range is not necessary on a road race car. I couldn't tell if you asked, am I picking the gaskets, or yes, have to ride about 75 miles? Live like you want to live. I'll take the twin turbos. Doesn't your Porsche have twins on it? Blue collar, 24 degrees of total timing. Upper 12s air fuel. Didn't seem like it more than that for timing. We normally run them at 29, but I don't know. In the vehicle, it might only want that much. But I would try putting good gas in it and see if more timing helps, because the timing is going to hurt the peak power more than it is the low speed power. Properly tuned VCT should improve turbo response. Again, it's going to depend on the VCT that you're doing, on the turbo that you're doing it on. Are you doing it on one that was designed for that? Or are you putting sort of aftermarket variable vane thing on there on the existing turbo? Because that would kind of be cool. LM7 with an LSX RT intake says it'll fit factory injectors, but I'm trying to find 1200 cc's. However, I can't find any mention of physical dimensions for injector fitment, length, circumference. Am I overthinking it? Yeah, we just do spacers on the rails and stuff a lot, but you should figure out the injector length that they're looking for on that LSX RT intake manifold, because there is a specific length that fits. And do you have, if you have an LSX RT, you don't have a factory fuel rail on it, right? You have their rails on it. You have the fast rails, because the fast rail has, I don't think that they had multiple height points. I think we just had to put spacers under the L brackets on the back side of the fuel rails to get larger injectors in there. So you need to look and see what FAST recommends for, because I can't remember if that uses an LS2 or an LS3 length injector. And then you need to see if they make something that's that length in that flow rate. Are 120-pound injectors big enough for 1200 horsepower? Yes, they are. They'll actually support 1900 horsepower on an NA motor. They'll support 1600 under boost. And about 1300 with E85. Boost is a measurement of restriction, but most of that restriction is the amount of air the engine can process. We're on a single turbo Coyote and waiting to get back on the dyno to test more. Having an infinitely adjustable LSA should help make interesting things happen. We've done a lot of testing with boost on Coyotes. Most of that's been on the engine dyno, but some of it on the chassis dyno. Most of it's been on the engine dyno. We found lots of ways to lose power with variable cams, and not a lot of ways to gain power, especially with the factory cams. You don't have fuel rails yet. So the fuel rails that you use are going to determine what injector length you're going to need. Is the blow too big to spool quickly as twins for 650-ish wheel horsepower? 5.3 sloppy stage 2, max speeding 37s. Anti-surge T3. What is an anti-surge T3 flange? 4-bolt, 500 plus horsepower. So those are be good turbos. Those would be good for. I think they would be like sub 1,000 horsepower turbos. But I'd like to test them and see. But 650 wheel horsepower would be fine. That the camshaft is the worst thing that you have there for spool rate. You need a smaller camshaft if you want to improve the spool rate, because sloppy stage 2 is not a great low speed power cam. Richard, is there a preferred brand or two of fuel pumps that you like to use? No, because I don't do a lot of that stuff on the chassis dyno. We use a big brushless air motive pump on the engine dyno. But I've used the Walbro stuff a lot, the 255s, and I think we've run the air motive 342s as well. And there's probably others like the Hemi pumps. Back when I was in NA, I did a lot of testing with it. Ended up with a slightly modified stock setup. Like you, I found ways to lose 80 horsepower. Yeah, you can lose a ton. And the thing is, when it's boosted, you can lose even more. You're like, this is not going the way that I thought it was going to go. I'm scrolling back, Eric, to see what you're talking about with a rattlesnake. Are you talking about the paint job? And what is that Bosch pump? I don't know what the Bosch pump that we use goes way back. It was either a 928 or a 930 turbo Porsche pump, the one that I have that I ran on my Mustang. I appreciate the tech. Ford has it in the Coyote. It is good, and that motor can definitely make a lot of power. I mean, the thing is, it makes a lot of. It has a very high specific output. It makes a lot of power NA, and responds to mods. And as we know, if it does that, it responds also to boost. I have a 219 cam that I bought from you. Is it still too big for the above referenced twins? No, that'd be better than the sloppy cam would be. That would make the turbo spool better. A truck Norris cam would be even better yet, because that's basically the best cam, the sloppy best cam. The sound of my microphone is a rattlesnake. I chose the right mic. I chose the right mic. Should be good. Should be good to go. Don't sass me. I thought I picked the right one. Let's see. That's right, I muted you. Oh, we don't have our poll going yet. So what should our poll be today? Throw out some poll ideas. Should Richard get a better microphone? Actually, this microphone, this one right here, this one's good. Hello, hello. I think I need that in front of me so that nobody can see me and I can just hide behind this. Hey guys, what's going on? That's why I have it off to the side. It's good now. It just needs to be flicked. Is the biggest cam best for turbo spool? Come on, let's hear those poll ideas. We only got 29 minutes left or so. Normally, when the mic is rattling, it's this one up here. It's actually the one on the camera because I just selected the wrong mic when I start this. A turbo inline 6 or NAV8. Y'all on the channel inspired me to change my oil after 20,000 miles. It's probably time. 20,000 miles used to be a really good amount for tires or for spark plugs. We need to spam Brian Wolf's page again, but send Richard to Godzilla. I think Brian Wolf's already doing a good job with his Godzilla stuff. So you just go look at it. He does really good stuff over there. Do you use the internet for engine research or do you read books? Uh, 132 T6. Is it an S475 go for broke on that 393? If that's the case, then yes. I kind of like do twin turbos always spool faster than a single? See how people were paying attention. Twin turb skis always spool faster than a single. And our poll is up, and we're up and running. An S366 is not a T6. Go for broke. An S366 should be a T4. I don't think I've ever seen an S366 that's a T6. Richard, what's better, a 302 or a 351 as a starting point? That would be a good poll. But I can't ask it in that direction. I have to ask, is the 302 better than the 351 as a starting point? The answer obviously is no, because we know bigger is definitely better. I used to daily drive a sport bike, refused to go cheap on my tires. New tires every 5,000. So you got the sticky ones then every 2 months. That's not cheap. Being a packaging, the 302 does fit in a lot of smaller cars easier than the 351. That is true. Pull for the next other guy's engine. Wouldn't that have to be a 302 just on availability? Yeah, maybe. I'm certain that I see more 302s in the wrecking yard than I see 351s, although I don't think by a lot. How about which is better, proper twins or proper single? I don't think that there'd be any difference between those. Where did the slang term turbskis come from? The first place I saw it, I'm thinking was Garrett. I remember maybe applied to Ruby or something. I remember in school they would say, look for absolutes in questions like always. That's right. Where's a good educational source for turbo education, a sense of understanding the sizing and performance parameters to propeller size, impeller size for application? You need to go get Corky Bell's book. It's not bad. There are other books on turbocharging as well. But a good place to go is go to the Matchbot and go to the Garrett and Borg Warner sites and just look at the turbos and then try to understand what's going on. Understand this: if you go in with the knowledge knowing the power output of your NA engine, you can plot any level of power and the corresponding boost level on any map. So if you know your motor makes 300 horsepower, you know at 14.7 pounds, it's going to make 600 horsepower. You can then, and using math, you can use any other boost level as a percentage of 14.7. You can go, okay, down at the bottom here, this is airflow, which is horsepower. So this number down here, if it's a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, that's in hundreds horsepower. So if it has a 2, that's 200 horsepower. If it has a 4, it's 400, 6 is 600. So you go, look, my 300 horsepower motor is going to make 600 horsepower at 14.7 pounds of boost. So I go to the 6, because that's 600 horsepower, and I keep sliding it up the graph until I intersect to the point at 14.7 pounds of boost, which is going to be the 1 mark, right? It's been a while since I looked at a map. I think it's the 1. Maybe it's the 2. I think it's the 1. At 1 bar of boost, because that's 14.7 pounds. So at that point where they intersect 14.7 pounds of boost and 600 horsepower, that's your spot on the map. And then you look at it and go, oh, right there it is 73% efficient or 72% or whatever. And then what you'll come, and then just keep doing that. And then you'll get information. You'll start understanding how all of this works. Take any engine, whatever the NA power output is, and any boost level or any power output, and it will tell you what boost level that has to be. So you can start working those back and forth, different directions. What about boost? What about power? What about NA power? All that. And you can start, and you'll start to understand how you can choose your turbo, because you'll see where those plots are. Oh, for a 600 horsepower turbo at 30 pounds of boost, this isn't a good turbo because I'm not even on the map. This turbo doesn't even like that kind of combination. Oh, this turbo over here, it does like that because it wants to go way up in pressure ratio. So it likes 30 pounds of boost and 600 horsepower. And you'll start to have a feel for that. But you have to put the time and effort in to start understanding that. But with that, armed with that information, you can go a long way towards turbo sizing. S475 on a 6-liter would be better with a T4 or T6 hot side. In the test that I did at near 1,000 horsepower, there was no difference between those two. I'm told from guys that are yelling at me about it, oh, if you don't have a T6 on there, you're going to lose 200 horsepower or whatever. I haven't ever seen that. At that power level, there was no difference. If you want to go above that, which in my opinion, on an S475, you're not going to go much above 1,000. So either one of them will work. If you want to go bigger than that, then maybe look into a T6. .351 Windsor and a 400 M crank. Do those have the same bearing sizes? And a 351 closed chamber head. What rod are you using on that? Yeah, Dean, you can just ask me. I can I can tell you it's going to be one of two turbos because everything in the world is, well, now there's three because there's a GT3582 and a 3076. Yeah, Gale Banks is another good place to go get turbo stuff. Although he tends to go toward the higher end of understanding, and that leaves a lot of people behind. The reason I asked about VVT was because I want to swap a VVT double over a cam engine into a hot rod body. That's good. You should do that. As long as you're putting the factory ECU and stuff in there, but you want to use a standalone, will it run VVT? Poland is the right answer. Turbskis has been around since I was in high school. There's no new ideas. So my 2.8 liter inline six makes 150 horsepower, and with boost pump gas tune, it'll make, I don't know about a pump gas tune. I don't know how much you have to take away from that. But it'd make 300 horsepower at 14.7 pounds of boost if you have a good intercooler and good fuel and the right amount of timing. On pump gas, you're not going to get that. You're going to be less than that. Will you talk about ring gap? Yeah, you need enough ring gap. And if you don't, what happens is the rings get hot and the gap that's between them decreases, and then it decreases. Then you don't have any of it. And then what happens is, because there's no gap there, it'll catch in the edge of the bore and it'll snap your ringland and break your piston. So under boost, you need to have more ring gap than you do NA. There's a background noise. It reminds me of a cat. Plugs one of those tiny door stoppers. Chrysler 6-cylinder rods for the 351-400 combo. I wonder if I didn't select the right thing again. I thought that I did. What was the actual maximum power you made with the blower adapter? We only ran that one. I only ran that one blower, that Ford Racing one, and we didn't ever run it very high. I thought it was only in the 600 horsepower range, but let me see. Maybe it was more than that. Going back to my data, and not the guy from Star Trek, although he was awesome. Cathedral port and supercharge and L33. L33 Ford blower test. Man, we ran a lot of stuff. I think that's six. That one's 675. I think 675 was the number. Yeah, that's what it looks like. That was with the blower and the AccuFab oval throttle body. And I only ran it with whatever pulley was on that blower. Fell asleep watching Golden Girls reruns? I asked why you can't lock out the VVT and use the same camshafts. I think you can do that. But it just isn't going to work as well as it does with VVT. What high octane fuel do you run on the dyno that's not E85 and it's not leaded? We run no E local, and lead kills oxygen sensors. Lead doesn't kill them immediately, so we run leaded fuel on a lot of stuff. They have a variety of different octane rated fuels. They have 100 unleaded, and then they have the other stuff that's 112 or 114 leaded stuff. You remember an old Chilton book? Yeah, I don't know if I have any of those out right now. I don't think that I do. I thought that I had a couple though. We have run the VVT motors, like a good example is the 3-valve Ford. We ran the 3-valve Ford and just left it the way that it was. Just ran it, and it stays in a locked position. And I don't remember what their default was, if it was full advanced or full retarded or somewhere in the middle. On a dual plane intake, is there a difference in effect of how much the divider is milled out? Yeah, it will change it if you take out a little bit versus taking out a lot. But I think you get to a point where it doesn't do anything else after a certain depth. Richard, I've been trying to ask, on a cam only 5.3 endurance race engine, do you run a catch can? I would run a catch can and not a PCV to the manifold. It's the camera making the reality autofocus. So I must have selected the wrong thing. Admiral, your statement is not accurate. As an absolute, 500 horsepower turbos may or may not spool faster than a single 1,000 horsepower turbo. You'd have to look specifically at the two turbos and specifically at the single turbo that you chose to do that, and that would be the thing. It has nothing to do with an absolute single versus twin thing. Brian Barnhall did a great podcast talking about widebands. There is a big difference between them. They're not interchangeable. And also they're different. We've tested, at West-Tech, we did a test on 6 or 8 different widebands, and we get 6 or 8 different readings. Actually, some of them were fairly close, but you do have disparities of what they're reading. And so it does change. The only issue you see, there's actually nothing wrong with the photo, Aaron. It was more of a discussion about people trying to find things that are wrong. Aaron, as you take the divider out, you transition the dual plane into starting to act more like a single plane, kind of. Actually, more like a dual plane with an open spacer between the carburetor and the intake manifold. So it hurts the signal down low. It actually tends to improve the signal a little bit at the top. So you're going to change the air fuel. If you don't change jetting, you're going to change the air fuel curve just by milling out that center divider. On Black Friday last year, I got my 7875 for $350. Blue collar, I have not found a cam yet for the 375 horse 396. I've not found a factory cam for that yet. Dan, exactly. They're the same cam though, lucky for me. It makes both of those power outputs. $375, that is pretty cheap for a turbo, especially one that's that size. It's amazing that you can get near 1,000 horsepower that cheaply. Haywood, I don't know what you mean by what's my opinion on professional products intake manifolds. You got to be specific of what you're asking. What intake are you asking about? I don't think you can make a statement universally about their company or about their products if you have one in mind, because we've tested a lot of their stuff and a lot of their stuff has worked really well, as good as the thing that they copied. In some cases, are all Ford 302s the same? And which ones are best for performance? No, a Boss 302 is the most powerful factory 302. I guess the Coyote guys would argue that. 50% of the people don't know anything about a turbo, cast wheel versus billet, ball bearing versus journal, exhaust housing. I know, but that's why they're here. They're here for us to help them understand that. Opinions is the new thoughts. It's a workaround. I've seen conflicting information about Ford 2V cams. Kevin, do you mean stock 2V cams? They're low profile aluminum intake line for LS1 and LS6s. I actually haven't seen those from professional products. I didn't even know that they were still in business and doing well. But if they're low profile ones, like the Sniper ones, or like the ones that Phytech sells, or the Sniper stuff, and lots of people, TSP has them. If they're that intake manifold, then we've tested it and talked about this many, many times. Just take a look. It loses power down low, and it's a short runner, high RPM kind of manifold. Down in Australia, there's a 9.2 deck 302 Cleveland. Is the 302 Cleveland a 9.2 deck? For some reason, I thought that it was a Windsor deck. I thought it was a Boss version, but a Cleveland motor for some reason. Just shows what I know. The PI and the non-PI cams are definitely different in the 2-valve stuff. I mean, there's definitely a lift difference in those cams. We know that that's the case. But I thought maybe you were talking about the truck versus the Mustang cams. How much booster torque would an Olds 307 handle? 7.4 pounds. I don't know. Cannot wait to see testing on the Trophy 4-cylinder with all the cams. Yeah, David Vizard. He's supposed to be sending the head out. We'll see. No platform, just PI versus non-PI. There's definitely a difference. I know that that's the case. We've tested those. One of them is a 500 lift cam. One of them is a 550 lift cam. Can the DoD cam stay in an L83 in a swap and just tune it out? I think you can. Haywood, what do you want to send me a picture of? Oh, the intake manifold. It's probably like these. It's probably like the Sniper ones. Do you think a higher static compression ratio would spool faster? Yes. If you raise the compression, if you go from 8 to 1 to 10 to 1, and you keep everything else the same and the turbo is the same, it will spool faster because you'll make more low-speed power. Let's see. Rod, when Westech dynoed my big block Chevy, they use a 2-inch primary tube header. I think that's what the... Don't they also have a 2 1/4? How does Steve determine what header to run during the testing? They probably just put on whatever's convenient. Some of the headers have 802s built into them. Some of them just have one. And some of them have different collector extensions on them. Honestly, for a dyno, he's not trying to optimize your exhaust for a dyno test. They're just putting an exhaust on there normally. Then would you use an LS6 versus... I use an LS6 over an LS2 intake manifold. It makes more power. The Cleveland 302 or 49 is just a 351 Cleveland. Oh, with a 3-inch stroke in it. Okay. So, Bear, you want to have the turbo chop cam? So, on engine building channel on YouTube, throw together a 403 by 375 LS engine. A 3750 stroke? That's a weird stroke. So they're building a, that's a like a 383 then? Travis, I don't understand what your comment is. Live chat or top chat? I'm trying to scroll back to see if there was something else that you were asking, but I don't see anything. They made the crank specifically for that. Yep, that seems odd that they would do that. I don't know why you wouldn't just put a 4-inch stroke crank in it, but then people would want to see the comparison of the 383 done with the 5.3 and the 4-inch crank, and then the 6.0 with the shorter crank. You know, because the short stroke and the long rod and the making more power. Richard, can you tell me the difference between ball bearing and journal? What do you mean the difference? Obviously, the bearings are a different design, if that's what you mean, or are you asking me about spool rate? Because we've talked about that before. At the top of the chat window, you can choose to read live chat, which is everything, or the default top chat that delays what you see and puts things out of order. Oh, okay. Some messages such as potential spam are not visible. We can do live chat and see. Am I missing some of them? Is that what you're asking? People think they spool the same. How much different, Joel? How much different do you think that there's how much of a spool difference do you think that there is between a ball bearing and a journal bearing turbo? Please don't say 500 RPM. Seems like a waste only going from a 3622 to a 3750 stroke. But then you could compare it to the other 383, which is kind of cool. Also a 6300 rod. What about the MSD pump they sold years ago that was relabeled from somebody else? Well, that's what most of those are. Walbro probably makes the pumps for everybody, and then they just repackage them. Pro stockers have a deck height of 9 inches now. Is it because they have all that rod ratio? Who taught you how to be so cool? I'm not. I need to be more cool, more cooler. Don't forget to hit the like button. I did. I wanted all the extra spam. Spam sandwich. Someone wants to see 1,000 cubic inch coyote. It's going to take more than coyote heads on it to feed that. Just beat it, Dan. Dean, not Dan. But Dan, I thought rod ratio is everything. All the rod ratio and all of the ball bearing turbos that you can handle. And then piston flip. Are 2 Walbro pumps suggested for 500 to 800 horsepower, or is 3 better? Which ones? The 255s? I don't think I would put 255s. I mean, I would go up to the bigger ones, the 342s or whatever. What can would work in my 2016 1500 5.7 Hemi that won't require a spring upgrade? I need to look and see. I honestly don't know what NSR cams there are for that later Hemi. Michael, that would be a good poll question. Does rod ratio improve turbo response? I want to see a test. I want to see an actual test where they show that, and we've talked about this many, many times because we always talk about this. It's like talking about Skinwalker Ranch. I want to see a ball bearing turbo show better turbo response. I really want to see that, because when you have oiling to a journal bearing and you have oiling to a ball bearing and you have a layer of oil between those, I just don't know how much extra friction there is there on a journal bearing turbo. Like, how much is there that you can actually improve upon? how much response is left on the table for you to get extra. Eldorado, thank you for. Did you have a question? Please ask a question. I want to see an actual test of the two-piece rods. I want to see that too. I'm interested in that technology. I know that changing the crank position is going to change the load on the crank, and that could help. But and my point was a comical one, is that you're not going to get a 30% increase in torque, because a 30% increase in torque is like 120 foot-pounds or 100 foot-pounds or 90, anywhere in there. That's a lot. That's a lot of foot-pounds from an angularity change. And I just don't see how that's possible. I really want it to be possible, but I don't see how it can be. Somebody said on that 3750 stroke crank that it was a custom ground crank. Hopefully all the millions of dollars we blow with minor stuff can add up to a quarter of a horsepower. Would you rather spend your money on cryo testing? I thought you were going to say crypto. I was going to say it's probably not a good venture right now. Cryo treating or WPC testing, say a cam or ring and pinion gears. I don't know enough about either one of those to know which one of those would do anything. We've done some coating tests, not cryo treating, but coated stuff definitely works. I mean, skirt coating definitely works. DLC coating definitely works, especially in the higher levels of racing and stuff. All of that stuff definitely works. But the thing is, I always put it over in this like group over here of stuff that I'm not that concerned with, because I'm never building that kind of motor. If I was helping somebody with a cup motor, that'd be terrible for them. But if I was, those are the things that you start looking at, because the other things you've already taken care of. But most of us haven't taken care of the big things and then start worrying about the small things. Cast piston 5.3 NA recommended piston bore clearance. I'm standing here in my underwear ready to hone. Don't want to get good close. Are you putting together a brand new motor with cast pistons, or is this a junkyard motor that already has cast pistons in it? I asked earlier, just now figure out how to send super chats. That's a win then. Yes, but the change is dynamic. It would be like extending the stroke length. That could add 30%. I like I said, Kevin, I want it to be true. I want to see the cylinder pressure trace, which is what we're talking about. And I want to see if it extends the cylinder pressure trace, and it extends power production, if it extends the length of that, or improves it enough over a wider range. I mean, I know what that looks like, and I know what I want, and I want to see that. But again, that's a major change in power production for what I look at as a very minor change in what they're doing. An Oldsmobile 307, you just look at it as any other NA motor. Forget about what it is, or forget about what it has, forget about its rod or stroke or block or any of that. What is it doing NA? Does it make 100 horsepower, 200, 300? That's where it's starting at. Now you can add boost to that. Forget about it doesn't have enough head flow, it doesn't have enough camshaft, whatever. Just figure out what it's doing NA, and then we now know from our formula what it will do when we add boost. Start out by adding 7 pounds. Get the air fuel and timing right at 7 pounds and drive it around. It'll work good. That'll be fun, because it'll be 50% better than it was. And 50% better is a lot. Crypto horsepower. Can I take all the crypto horsepower that people give me and then skip to Bolivia or wherever I'm going to go once I have it all and have tricked people into giving me all that money or horsepower? I said that wrong. Ball bearing faster, journal bearing lasts longer. KC Turbos did some testing on 6-0 power strokes. He was worried about surge because it spooled faster. That just... I just had Spam for breakfast. Junkyard hone, I like honing stones better than a ball hone because if the balls are really uneven, you can see that. That's why you got to get the stroke RPM correct. Maybe 150 horsepower stock. But the thing is, if it's 150 horsepower and it feels like 150 horsepower, because it probably still makes 300 foot-pounds. So if it makes 150 horsepower and you're driving and it feels like that, if it now adds, if you added 75 horsepower, which would be 50%, that's pretty good. On piston clearance, it's a junkyard motor. So if you're, is it a standard bore and a standard bore piston and you're honing it? Is that the case? Or is it a overbore piston and you're trying to hone it to work? That'd be a lot. You have to machine it to do that unless it's only 5 over or something. Just check piston to wall clearance and see what it is. You should test one of those water carburetors. Yeah. They'll make me, they'll disappear me. Yeah. How much nitrous can you use on a stock junkyard motor with a stock tune? I don't know what you mean by stock tune. You just have a bone stock motor and you just want to add nitrous to it. If you are you not taking away timing? You need to take away timing, or you need to run good fuel in it. So Jim, if this all sounds like a story that this guy's telling you. So how would he be riding the surge line? Because the increase in spool is only going to bring the turbo up to some impeller speed that it will eventually get to with the other bearing. So did it spike up into the surge line because of the spool rate? There's no way it could change that much. That's what I'm talking about. It can't do that. A ball bearing cannot change that. That would say that would tell you that the journal bearing is just lugging the impeller down and not allowing it to spin. And that can't be the case. That's not what happens. At least it's never been the case that I've seen. And the surge line would be dependent on the turbo sizing and the power output and not the spool rate. What would be the ideal primary tube size for a 398 big block with boreless stack injection, mild valve work on a stock? I have no idea. I'd have to test it to see. There would be, I need to know what you mean by ideal. Are you meaning that it makes the most peak power? You mean it makes the most low speed power? Turbo size, I mean, header sizing is also a bit of a science as well, like runner length is on intake manifolds. My understanding of ball bearing turbo has nothing to do with friction. It allows the clearance between the turbine compressor wheel and their housings, which I assume improves efficiency slightly. So are you saying that it can allow because that might be something, if it allows it to get tighter, because now there's less movement in the wheel, so you'd have to have more clearance. And so you would improve the efficiency of the turbo by doing that. That's another angle that I hadn't thought of. That's pretty good. So we'll go ahead and close out our poll at 85%. Do twin turbos spool faster than a single? 85% are saying no. I think that's a positive. That's good, Salvador. I like that. Twins look cool, but a decent single gets the job done. I have two Fox bodies, one with twins, one is a single on 3. They're both good cars. Yeah, the turbo sizing is the big thing for determining what the turbo is going to do. And then the other things that we're arguing about are all little things. Nitrous works really good to spool turbos. Dean, you're lost on the poll again? I think you're doing it on purpose. That's right, overbuilt. That's what we need is liquid ball bearings, right? Nick, I think tune length headers probably have an effect. They definitely have an effect on NA power, which should have an effect on boosted power. And the reflected wave is still going to work. The reverse reflected wave, the scavenging waves, because there's multiple versions of scavenging on headers too that lots of people don't realize. But those still work under pressure. So if it improves the power, it should help. Improved power should help improve spool rate, I would think. I don't know about the power. I don't know how much power that 450 will supply. I don't have a feel for that. I'd have to do the math on it, and it would depend on the fuel pressure and the fuel that you're using, and the air fuel, the brake specific fuel consumption. There's a lot of questions there. From what I've seen, the journal bearing has more clearance between the housing and the turbine and compressor wheels. So if there's less thrust movement, then you don't have to have that sort of clearance. So then that would make the turbo more efficient. So the bearing isn't doing that, it's the turbo. Pfizer talked about how good equal length, unequal length headers are, and they're a bit hard to figure out the math on. I would think that the unequal length headers might be better on a intake manifold that's also unequal length, like a single plane. Probably is thinking most of his stuff is carbureted. A single 525 is supporting 700 wheel horsepower on gas, 58 pounds of fuel pressure. The poll is not there anymore. We already took it off. It's time to go. It's time to get going. over the years, and this will be the last one for today, how have turbos improved? They have improved quite a bit. Impeller design has improved dramatically, and probably housing designs as well. So if you go test an old Ray J turbo from way back to compared to a turbo now, and obviously there are bigger sizes and all kinds of things to choose from. Because as with everything, the people that are designing these things have learned things because they've tested things and tried things and gotten better, and people have tested things out in the industry and gone faster, and all of that has happened. So we would expect something that was designed 60 years ago, whenever, to be better. Look at camshafts. They've come a long way. Intake manifolds, engines in general, all of the technology has gotten better, and turbos have too. And on that note, it's time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you guys all tonight, I guess, at 7.